Have to think that through.
If we understood what the Lord meant when he said, let us, the Trinity, let us make male and female in our image, he's talking about the relational image, which I think simply means this. How do they relate? I mean, they're the only small group that's ever gotten along really well. You think about it. Because the Trinity knows how to relate to one another, because they have the resources. They have all that they need because their nature is defined by love. And I put it this way. They are profoundly committed to the well-being of another at any cost to themselves. My natural nature is to be profoundly committed to my well-being at any cost to you. And until I understand that that's what comes naturally to me and recognize it in the moment of getting my wife's iced tea or doing the laundry or whatever it might be, realize, no, wait a minute, I'm willing to pay any price for the sake of another. If that becomes what is alive within me, my wife's going to smell it, and it's going to smell like really good.
Larry, let me ask you this. Do women manipulate in some way as well? I mean, we've talked about how men can manipulate for their end game. What about women, and how does that manipulation, what does it look like?
Perhaps my wife is listening as well. Say, no,
yeah, Rachel, you're on the line now.
No, of course. Women and men are both equally flawed, but we have our own unique styles of manipulating and self-protecting. And when the scriptures refer to a woman as someone who is open to receive, the woman who is threatened and doesn't want to be facing her own pain, rather than being open, she closes and she backs away. In the form in which she backs away, this will sound strange, she takes over. She becomes controlling. The core weakness of woman, oh dear, what am I going to get in trouble for this, is that she really becomes controlling. And I have a biblical basis for that. When the Lord said in Genesis to Eve, after she failed, your desire shall be for your husband as part of the consequence, that looks like a positive thing. Why is that negative? But the word desire has a very interesting meaning, and it literally means a desire to control, a desire to be in charge. I could defend that biblically if we had more time, but that's what it means. And a woman who desires to control is a woman who is protecting herself from being hurt. That's manipulative, and it's wrong.
How does a woman first realize that, and then what can she do to say, okay, how do I move more in a godly way, in God's character?
If she can begin to face the impact that her demand to control has on her husband, because she's a godly woman, because the Spirit of God is within her soul, even as she's controlling, when she recognizes the impact she's having on her husband, she's going to be broken by that. She's going to say, that's not what I want to do with this man. I don't want to make him feel small by controlling him like a mother to a little child. And when she realizes that, there's going to be a brokenness within her, and the brokenness is going to reveal within her own soul how much she really desires something very different than being in control. She desires to rest in the strength of another. She desires to build her husband up legitimately, to find whatever he's doing that's good, and to really enjoy it and make it known, as opposed to helping him to see where he's wrong and how he ought to change. Think of the Proverbs 18 passage, Proverbs 19, I'm not sure where it is, where the writer says, a man says, that I'd rather be in the attic of a house than living in the living room, if I can paraphrase, with a vexing woman, with a controlling woman.
Right.
I'd rather be in a desert, he says a few verses later, than to be with a contentious and a vexing woman. The word contentious there literally means a referee, a woman who has a whistle in her lips, like a basketball referee. The woman who has that, the whistle-blowing woman, is not attractive to any man. And when the woman realizes that that's what she's doing, her godly soul is going to say, oh, Lord, forgive me, because that's not the beauty of my womanhood.
Larry, when you look at the gender responsibilities, does either gender bear more responsibility as the minister? Does the man take on that mantle because he, in essence, is the leader, the spiritual leader of that union?
I would like to change the word responsibility to opportunity. Because when you talk about the man's responsibilities, woman's responsibilities, there's a certain pressure attached to that.
Right.
I've got to be responsible here.
Yeah.
But talk rather about the opportunities that are unique to each gender. And is one more important than the other? No, I don't believe it for a minute. Because we can each reveal something about the glory of God uniquely. Women can reveal something about how God invites us, openly invites us into the Trinitarian dance, if you will. And a woman can reveal that by the way she relates. And that's incredibly important. A man can reveal the movement of God in the incarnation, going to Calvary. He can reveal the movement of God by the way he relates. So we have two equally important opportunities to reveal the character of God by the way we relate to each other. Now, in terms of spiritual leadership in the home, the man is responsible, if I can use that word again because it's true, but the responsibility is an opportunity to reflect God by the way he moves toward his wife. And I would say this, just speaking practically and realistically about a marriage relationship, that if I'm not moving toward my wife, it kills the marriage. And I have an incredible opportunity to make our marriage come alive by moving. And I think the man's got to say, nothing matters more than my seizing my opportunity. Now, the woman should not be sitting there and saying, well, you jolly well better do it, and then I'll come along if you cooperate. Because she's got to say, well, I've got a pretty important opportunity as well. But when I think about, could I let my wife learn what it means to rest and learn what it means that the word submission doesn't have to be an ugly word. It's an opportunity for her to arrange herself under the larger design of God's plan for this marriage. And that shows off the character of Christ. If she can see it that way, then submission becomes a really good word, as opposed to, well, do what you're told, I'm the man.
Yeah, it's hard to believe that word can recover in today's culture, submission, because it's so misunderstood and besmirched.
And the word is hupotasso in the Greek, and it literally means to arrange yourself under a larger design. That's literally what it means.
Hupotasso.
Not do what you're told. Hupotasso is the word.
I think we should start using that, John. Hupotasso.
And when I told my wife, I said, honey, as I'm changing my views on submission from do what you're told, which in my early days I thought, well, that's what it means. And I'm getting to a little different understanding of that. I asked her just a few months ago, maybe a year ago, I said, honey, what's it like as I'm getting some deeper clarity in what's submission? She went, relief.
That says it all. Hupotasso.
Exactly.
Well, Dr. Larry Crabb is joining us again on Focus on the Family with Jim Daly. I'm John Fuller, and we're talking about one of the many books that Dr. Crabb has written, The Marriage Builder. And for details, you can swing by focusonthefamily.com/radio.
Hey, Larry, let's pick up. I want to ask you this question. Is there again, both men and women, we tend to, some personalities work well with checklists. Is there a way to recognize this in us, this selfishness you've been describing? So often with kids, I think with my own boys, I ask them to step back when they're emotionally out of control and take a deep breath or take a time out. Is there a mechanism that you and Rachel used early on to train yourselves to say, okay, here's my human response. Okay, I'm going to step back from that. What did you use as triggers?
I think there's maybe two keys to that. One is, do we have in our minds what I like to call, and this will sound like a fancy phrase, but it really isn't, categories of understanding? Do we have categories to think in? Paul says we're transformed how? By renewing our mind. Therefore, to have categories to think in. And if we have the category of what other-centeredness really is and how it contrasts with self-centeredness, commitment to my well-being at any cost to you, that's a category to think about. A category of what it means to be feminine as a woman, to be open to receive, to be masculine as a man, to be remembering and moving. If we have these categories in our mind, then we can take those as templates, if you will, to observe ourselves as we're relating. And then I have to tune into my emotional life. If I begin to feel an irritability, if I begin to feel a fear, if I begin to feel a retreating sense, then that's like the red light in the dashboard of your car. And then it's time to maybe stop the car, open the hood, take a look and see what's going on. So if you have categories of understanding and you're tuning into what's happening in your inner being and your inner world emotionally, then those become opportunities to do some serious good reflection that might lead to a recognition of what's going on here that maybe isn't so good and can lead to some real good stuff.
Yeah, there's a level of introspection that Dr. Crabb drives us to consider as he speaks and writes and as he's been on this broadcast, Jim. And I don't like that. I mean,
you're welcome.
It wasn't too long ago, just a few nights ago, in fact, where I came home. It had been a kind of crazy day, and I was just looking at getting something done at home. You know, the pile was kind of high. It wasn't the laundry pile. It's just a variety of things, and I felt like I hadn't accomplished enough at the office. So I will go home and accomplish. I'll get something done. I wasn't considering the fact that my wife has been home all day, has 3 kids in the house, and she might need something. And so my blocked goal, when I responded in anger to her saying, do you have a minute, was no, I don't have a minute. And I just tried to push her off, and the Holy Spirit kind of tapped me on the shoulder and said, what's really important, getting something done, or this opportunity your wife has? And, you know, I tried to push that off and ignore that, but that was a blocked goal of mine, and she was in the way of me getting something done. So my natural reaction was anger. You know, you're always wanting something from me.
And you know what I hope people are hearing as you're sharing those kind of stories? We are going to fail. We're not going to get it right. But failure is an opportunity to see what's really going on in our souls. Don't be afraid of failure. Use it as an opportunity to grow.
You know, Larry, so often here at Focus, when we talk about disagreements within marriage, Christian marriage particularly, occasionally we'll get letters or emails from people that say, hey,